Background: the business of exchanges. Bonus: depository receipts. Hopefully, I haven't lost all of you yet, and you don't feel like all of this information is too overbearing. Moreover, I hope you don't fall under the false impression that all these instruments and different systems and platforms that help make today's markets run are just used to gatekeep it from you and complicate your life. Some of the instruments you can purchase are there to make buying what you're interested in more accessible. Of course, a fee is assigned for this convenience. For this product, I want you to follow along with this simple thought experiment. For a moment, imagine you're living in a small town in the middle of Canada. You know only English, and your primary source of income is in Canadian dollars. You have become fascinated with buying a stock in South Korea in a Brazilian company. Generally, according to the respective country's securities laws, you would need to be resident or have residents buy stock on your behalf. You, living in the middle of Canada, thousands of kilometers away from both Brazil and South Korea, don't know anyone there, can't speak Korean or Portuguese, and have no idea even how to transfer money and convert it to their respective local currencies. In this case, the Korean won and the Brazilian real. How could you possibly buy stocks from these countries? Well, like in many things in life, you can breathe in, give up, and move on. However, you are determined and insistent on doing it. Your other option is to hope that the company decides to also list in Canada, being sold in Toronto Stock Exchange, the TSE in this case. However, Lady Luck doesn't shine on you, and that doesn't happen. So you save up, load up Google Translate, pack your bags, get on a plane, fly, find a broker, try to convert your currency, register with the countries, wait, in some cases, months to get approval, and then work on reporting income and paying tax on profits in both Canada, South Korea, or Brazil. Oh my God, that's wildly impractical. Is there a better way? Could someone make it easier and help you out? Let's perhaps look back in history to find inspiration for possible solutions. Hundreds of years ago, when commerce was expanding across the continents, merchants would not carry gold or valuables to trade as they were too heavy or impractical. What ended up happening? They would find custodians, such as bank, merchants, governments, etc., and get a receipt of their gold and valuables. Money would become transactions medium or promissory notes, meaning you would get paid a paper certificate or a claim to a trustee's gold reserves. The same idea can be used for depository receipts. Think of depository receipts as incorporating what we discussed about ETFs in a one-stock basket with a hedge tool, a tool used to convert your currency, Canadian dollars, to the local currency of where your stock is from, built in. Let's examine the main types. ADRs, American Depository Receipts. ADRs are the most common type of depository receipts, created in 1927 when the American markets were looking for ways to invest in foreign companies without the complications of international trading. How they work. A U.S. bank like J.P. Morgan Chase or a Bank of America purchase shares on a foreign company. These shares are held in custody at a local branch, corresponding bank in the company's home country. The U.S. bank issues certificates representing these shares to be traded on American exchanges. The ADRs are priced in dollars and pay dividends in dollars. Real life scenario. Say you want to invest in Toyota. Instead of navigating to the Tokyo Stock Exchange, you can simply buy Toyota's ADR, TM, on the New York Stock Exchange. When Toyota pays dividends in yen, the depository bank converts them to dollars before sending them to ADR holders. One Toyota ADR might represent 2 actual Toyota shares, depending on how the bank structures their certificates. ADRs come in 3 different levels, with each have different requirements. Level 1, traders over the counter with minimal SEC reporting requirements. Level 2, listing on major exchanges with more disclosures. And Level 3, allowing the company to raise capital in the United States with full SEC registration. CDRs, Canadian Depository Receipts. CDRs are newer than ADRs, launched in 2021 by the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, CIBC. They follow a similar concept, but with a key difference in how they handle currency fluctuations. CIBC purchased the shares of foreign companies, often from the United States. The shares are held in custody. CIBC issues certificates representing the shares to be traded on Canadian exchanges. The CDRs are priced in Canadian dollars and pay dividends in Canadian dollars. But here's the kicker. Unlike ADRs, CDRs have a floating conversion ratio that changes daily based on exchange rates. Real life scenario. A Canadian investor interested in Apple doesn't want to deal with the currency exchange rates or U.S. estate tax issues. Instead of buying Apple shares directly on the Nasdaq, they can purchase Apple CDRs at ticker AAPL.NE on the NEO exchange in Toronto. The floating ratio is what makes CDRs unique. If Apple trades at 175 USD and the exchange rate is 1.35 Canadians to 1 American dollar, CIBC must set the ratio so that one CDR represents 1/10 of an Apple shares and trades at around $23.63 Canadian. This is $175 times 1.35 for the exchange rate divided by 10. If the Canadian dollar strengthens against the United States dollar, the next day the ratio would automatically adjust to maintain the CDR's price in Canadian dollars. This means CDR holders are protected from currency fluctuations. However, a significant advantage over ADRs, where the conversion rate is fixed when the ADR is created. Conversion rate in the sense of how many shares of Apple you would own when you buy, so the ratio is consistent. So if you buy 1/10, it would always be 1/10, and for an ADR, for a Canadian, it's not true. EDRs, European Depository Receipts. EDRs work similar to ADRs for non-European commercial companies looking to access European capital markets. Secondary name for these are GDRs, Global Depository Receipts, and the names is interchangeable. How they work. Same for the ADRs. An European bank would purchase the non-European company. These shares are held in custody. The bank issues certificates representing these shares, and the EDRs are typically priced in euros. They're less standardized than American counterparts. While ADRs have been refined over long and nearly a century with clear SEC guidelines, EDRs operate under various European regulatory frameworks. Some key points about EDRs is that they can be traded on multiple exchanges simultaneously in Europe. They typically follow a fixed ratio model similar to ADRs, not like the CDRs. And they often have lighter regulatory requirements than ADRs, making them attractive for companies from emerging markets like Russia or India. Real-life scenario. A Russian energy company like Gazprom might issue EDRs traded in London Stock Exchange. This gives European investors a way to invest in Gazprom through a familiar exchange, with transactions and dividends in euros or pounds rather than rubles. It also allows Gazprom to access European capital without having to meet the full listing requirements of European exchanges. So, going back to our Canadian investor wanting to buy a South Korea or Brazilian company, depository receipts provide the solution. Instead of dealing with all these barriers, you can simply buy ADRs, CDRs, or EDRs, depending on what's available, through your local broker, using your Canadian dollars, filing taxes only in Canada, and sleeping well at night knowing you're diversified globally without all the headache.